Hi, everyone. Welcome to Reporters Roundtable. I'm Rafe Needleman in San Francisco from CNET. This is our weekly podcast on a single tech topic each time. This week, the topic is wireless security, something everyone should be aware of, if not afraid of. We have great guests here to talk about things like the AT&T iPad 3G security issues, issues of droids and iPhones saving data that you don't think they're saving, and so on. Guest number one from CNET News, our security reporter, Eleanor Mills. Eleanor, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
And our special guest, John Herring of Lookout Security. John, Lookout Security is a security company for consumers and their mobile devices, right?
Correct.
And you've been doing this for how long, and you make what product?
Lookout's been around for about 2 years now.
Yeah.
We build security software for smartphones.
That people can just go buy.
Absolutely.
This is the time for you to get your pitch in, so let us have it.
So if you'd like to protect your device with Lookout, hit www.mylookout.com. Download your device, protect it from hackers and threats, protect your data, and protect your device if it's lost or stolen.
Great. Well, thanks for coming in. Really appreciate it. It's your expertise in as a security researcher and building that product that we're really looking forward to getting onto here. So it's obviously the timing on this show. This show is about the news, and the news of the last week or two is primarily the iPad 3G, the cellular connected iPad, being exploited by the guys over at Goatse Security, who figured out a way to get email addresses and ICC-ID numbers. And we thought that was the end of it at first, but it's not. It's a more serious breach. Eleanor?
It wasn't an iPad breach or problem.
Okay.
It's an AT&T website problem.
Mm-hmm.
There was a flaw in the way they had an application on the website for customers to access to interact with AT&T's website, and this group discovered that if they plugged in some information, they could get back email address that correlated with the SIM ID for the SIM card, the serial number for the SIM card in that user's iPad.
So I have a table of emails and SIM card IDs. What does that get me, John?
Well, what you can do with that is then take that data and through some basic calculations that allows you to access another subsegment of data, which could then expose users' actual email address, location, a whole host of other things, which is the bigger issue, if you will. And per Eleanor's comment, this is kind of one of the interesting questions. This wasn't an attack against the mobile device itself. No. However, with more mobile devices having web services attached to them, the question is a web service the entree into attacking these mobile devices?
Well, it's an interconnected world. I mean, everything but a rock these days has some footprint on the internet, it appears. So
right.
If you have the entree from the internet into the device itself. Now, what can you get? When you said location, do you mean location of where the user is registered, or location of the device itself?
Location of the device itself.
How does that work?
Certain circumstances, there's certain data that can be exposed through the data that has been compromised to the iPad. That allows coarse location, meaning the general location. So we could tell, okay, one is in San Francisco, for example, or potentially slightly more accurate than that. You couldn't say you're on a certain area, down to 10 meters, for example. But this could be very valuable for a targeted attacker if government or a corporate user was exposed, for example. Telling where they're traveling and where they are at any time could be potentially very risky.
Well, considering that many of the devices were government and military devices, that sounds extremely risky.
Indeed.
But how do you get from the security code, what we thought was originally just email addresses, to actually getting into hijacking or sniffing the data from the device itself? Is it because of this translation from the SIM ID, that's called the ICC-ID, right, to the device's own internal network ID?
Correct, and there's a very similar correlation between the two, i.e. there's just very basic digits that need to change in a very simple calculation that allows that to happen. It actually reminds me in certain circumstances of the early days of Bluetooth, where it was very hard to get the Bluetooth ID of an iPhone. However, if you were able to get the Wi-Fi MAC address, there was only a 2 octet difference from the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth different.
I thought that was on purpose for a good reason, but actually that's a flaw, isn't it?
Well, it depends on how you look at it, but this is just another great example where certain characteristics of an identifier that are very closely related to another identifier. So by gleaning one piece of data, it actually may allow you to get access to lower levels of the system.
Now, I thought that the translation from ICC-ID to IMSI, which is the phone's
Correct.
data, was supposed to be somehow non-obvious, or at least, or at best, protected. Isn't that by design? Isn't that the case?
It can be gleaned if you have the ICC-ID,
Yeah.
which is the serial number for the SIM card. You can get the International Mobile Subscriber Identity Number, which is the MC, because the serial ID number includes part of the MC. Then you can get the rest of the MC if you know the country and if you know the mobile provider, the network provider. So, that's stuff that's pretty easy.
So what's the fix for this particular issue? And don't say your software, but what's the real architectural fix for this vulnerability?
Well, in this specific example, as Eleanor had mentioned, it's not a mobile device vulnerability specifically.
Okay.
So here it's about the web application component being secured, and the fixes on the side of AT&T, for example, in this case, and coordination between AT&T and Apple. I think the underlying architectural or the lesson from this is that people who are developing software that has a web application or an externally facing component that's always on, connected to a mobile device, need to take security extremely seriously. We're going to see more and more of that.
So what do the telcos do outside of this to protect our calls? If I call my mother or my stockbroker or my doctor, what do the telcos do to protect the integrity of that call? What's to prevent somebody from, like a Google Street View camera with an antenna from getting that call out of the air?
It's a great question, and it's interesting to think about things abstractly. All this data flowing all over the air, and the question is, can someone reach out and grab it? So telcos encrypt voice calls, messages, all sorts of data over the air. They definitely do use encryption, although the algorithms used to encrypt the data have been broken theoretically. And so the question is, as the networks upgrade, can they use stronger encryption algorithms, which is what we're seeing. So, for example, newer networks such as UTMS or UMTS on AT&T also prevents call hijacking by performing verification that the phone's talking to a legitimate network, for example.
So some kind of secure handshake.
Exactly.
And this wasn't the case before. It used to be able, I guess, with ham. Could you
Way back
previously,
when,
with ham radio equipment, just pick a call out of the air?
With basic radio equipment on analog networks, it was possible to listen to the calls. This would have been in the early 90s.
Well, sometimes, early cell phone users remember hearing other people's phone calls.
Yes.
That has not happened to me since we moved to digital.
Well, the networks have changed, which is good.
Yeah.
It's good for everyone. So they're on top of it.
So as we get new evolutions of phone technologies, and we move from GSM to LTE and stuff like that, do we also get more security there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's most exciting about fourth generation networks is, first and foremost, the data throughput. We're going to have hugely popular high-speed connectivity. But when we look about security, generally speaking, 4G is going to be more secure than 3G technologies. So, for example, LTE and WiMAX use stronger encryption than previous generation networks. There's also a stronger authentication, so attackers can't pretend to be your cell network, which is often what happens with a man-in-the-middle attack, for example, and hijack your calls and data.
To go back slightly to the iPad 3G hack, I understood that was one of the issues, that if you have the IMSI number, you can tell that device with a pirate or hack tower that I am your cell network and you must talk to me. Is that one of the exploits?
You could use that type of data for different types of attacks.
Yeah.
The research is pretty limited at this point. I think that the security research community, the general consensus is there's just a few things that can be done.
Okay.
They're more on, just to be clear, those attacks are more on the theoretical side right now. The biggest issue is that the information was compromised. We don't know who grabbed those 115,000 plus sets of data, user data.
We know one of the groups who did. We don't know all the groups who
fair.
did.
And,
right?
and that's my implication.
Okay,
is,
good point.
Could another malicious group have taken it? Broadly speaking, I don't think that there's been a large-scale attack. There certainly could be.
Should AT&T reissue micro SIM cards to all the iPad 3G holders?
That's a good question. I think that more forensic research needs to be done as to if there's other steps that could be taken to keep users safe. That's if something can be done in software, then that would be much easier.
Let me ask you a different way. I'm Ramo Manuel. I have an iPhone. I've had iPad 3G. I've read all this stuff. I'm sure I've been briefed. The FBI has probably come and taken my iPad 3G away from me because of this stuff. when can I start to use it again?
I think that it depends on who you are. If you're using highly sensitive information in your device and you're working for the government or a corporation, I mean, this is mission critical data.
Yeah.
I think you should take it more seriously and probably take steps to actually physically change things out.